where you are. If you're on the East Coast, I'm in Mountain Standard Time. Welcome to another episode of the Tina Parker Show. This is Sunday's faith message, WTFU Daily, okay? The teaching, the message today is around you were never meant to be managed. Oh, this hits so hard. All right, ladies, if you know anyone that is struggling with faith, struggling with trusting institutions, trying to figure out what you believe, you don't want to miss this episode and any others that I bring to you, because I share the truth. I share things that you're not taught in institutional religion, things that they've left out, things that they didn't want you to know. All right, we are talking about the Gospel of Thomas today. And I want you to know more about this, these teachings, this wisdom. They didn't want you to know because it makes it more difficult to manage you. How can you believe that? Did you realize that? If you realize that they were trying to manage you, it's pretty crazy, right? It's a pretty crazy thought. You don't want to miss this episode. Don't forget to subscribe, and let's dive in and maybe take notes. You may need to take some notes. Okay. Let's see. Many women today feel lost, exhausted, and unsure of themselves. They do, because we've been told all of these things, and then we're learning new things. And now people are kind of like, what do I believe? So we're all kind of in this space where we're learning new things. And so I'm here to bring you some new information. I think it's really important to learn new things, don't you? Especially mothers, they're unsure of themselves, especially mothers who've been spent years in survival mode. Okay, I was a single mom, just so you have a little backstory. I was a single mom. Got pregnant at 16, had my daughter at 17. I have a very, very colorful background. And I can relate with pretty much any woman out there, what you've experienced, okay? I even was, at one point, the secretary in the primary presidency of the LDS Church. So I've been, and I've also studied other religions. So I've experienced quite a bit. And I'm grateful that you're here today. In today's WTFU Daily Faith Message, we return to the beginning. Genesis 1:27, to uncover truth that's been buried under guilt, burnout, and religious misunderstanding. Do you feel like there's been some religious misunderstanding? All right, but before we do that, I really want to just share a little bit about what the book of Thomas, or the Gospel of Thomas is. Have you heard of the Gospel of Thomas? Have you studied it? I personally did not even know anything about it until 2 weeks ago. Seriously. So we are going to talk about the book of Thomas. I'm tying in some scriptures too. So you're going to get a little bit of everything from me. I think it's important to learn these things. All right. So where are we? Okay, here we go. We're getting there. I added it at the bottom of my episode, and so I'm jogging down on here. Okay, so just be patient with me, and then I'll go back up. So before we begin, what is the Gospel of Thomas? Okay, before we go further, I want to slow this down, because many women and men have never heard of the Gospel of Thomas. And if you had, put it in the comments. And when they do, it's often framed as forbidden. So then it makes me want to know, why was it forbidden? Dangerous. Ooh, I want to know more. Why? So we're going to talk about it, okay? I don't think it's dangerous, but when you learn more about it, you're going to go, oh, I see why they thought it was dangerous. The Gospel of Thomas is not a story about Jesus' life, miracles, and crucifixion. It's a collection of 114 sayings attributed to Jesus, which his real name is Yahshua. Short teachings, reflections, and wisdom statements. No narrative, no timeline, no doctrine, just sayings meant to be heard, wrestled with, and discerned. It was discovered in 1945 among Nag Hammadi, could be mispronouncing his name. Texts in Egypt. Ancient writings buried for centuries, preserved in the original Coptic language, Coptic. If you know that word, then you just say it in your brain, okay? Scholars date parts of it to the 1st and 2nd century, meaning it circulated very early alongside other Yahshua's traditions. Okay, the text is attributed to Didymus Judas Thomas. So now important clarity. We cannot prove authorship the way we prove modern authorship. Early writings were often attributed to respected teachers and or communities, not individuals in today's sense. But why it matters is how it was used. Okay, it circulated among early followers. It was read alongside other teachings. It emphasized this part hits me so strong. It emphasized inner transformation, not institutional authority. That hits, right? Put it in the comments if that message hit, okay? Why it was left out of the Bible. I always ask all these questions, okay? This is where discernment matters. The Gospel of Thomas was excluded during the canon forming period, roughly the 2nd through the 4th century, when church leaders decided which texts could be or would be standardized. The reasons were not because it was evil, they were practical. It just didn't fit the narrative structure of the other gospels. It offered wisdom sayings, not doctrine. It emphasized personal insight and responsibility, not external authority. Okay, we're not giving our authority. We were created in the image of Yahweh. We have him in us. We have that power. So why wouldn't we want to emphasize our personal insight and responsibility and not hand it over to external authority? Does that make sense? Okay, that's what they've done. It didn't support centralized teaching control. In other words, it was harder to manage. When I read this, I'm like, unbelievable. I don't want to be managed, like I already have discernment within me. We all do. And texts that require people to think. These messages from the Gospel of Thomas requires people to think, discern, and take responsibility. But that is always harder to institutionalize. Get it? Put it in the comments if you get it. Okay, what the Gospel of Thomas emphasizes. Okay, awakening, inner clarity, discernment, responsibility, seeing truth for yourself, transformation without performance, not blind obedience, just believing. Sometimes we were brought up in churches or brought up in a way with the government or culture, or, some of our kids, they don't even know the time without a cell phone like us older folks, And so they just believe that things are the way they are. They don't know that there was something different, and they don't know what life was like without that. And so sometimes our beliefs, we don't even realize, but they're not our beliefs. They're someone else's beliefs. It could even be our parents, because that was all they knew, okay? So this is not about blind obedience. We should never have that, okay? Fear-based faith, okay? Sometimes they put this fear in you to keep you get it? Compliance culture, external validation. This doesn't replace Scripture. It challenges how Scripture has sometimes been used. And why this matters for today's modern women, okay? Many women feel confused, small, exhausted, managed, told what to think instead of how to think. The Gospel of Thomas doesn't tell women to obey. It asks women to see, and seeing changes everything. For a modern woman, especially a mother, this helps her trust her discernment again, because we're going back to remembering who you are. The image, a creator of Yahweh. Okay? It's going to help you reconnect your responsibility without guilt. Understand faith as alignment, not submission. Move from survival mode into clarity and stop outsourcing authority over your life. Okay, it's going to remind you that faith was never meant to turn off your mind. It was meant to wake you up. Okay, so this is it's historical wisdom, and it's wisdom. It was meant to be tested, not feared. Okay, some of the doctrine, they place this fear, and so we're afraid to go outside the lines. And if we do things that to the institution is bad, then we carry this shame and this guilt because we're being questioned all the time. And we were born to be feminine and to love who we are and our power and our beauty, all of the things, ladies, not to have shame around it. All right, discernment is the goal, not replacement, not rebellion. So when we say today's teaching is we were never meant to be managed, we're not rejecting faith. Now remember the women in the Bible, I've told you this before, they walked with Yahweh. They lived in faith, walking with Yahweh before religion even was a thing, okay? We are reclaiming the original call to responsibility, clarity, and authority that has always been there. So now let's return to the beginning. And you can reference Genesis 1:27, okay? And we talked about that yesterday. You can watch the episode from yesterday if you want to know more about that. But now I just really wanted to touch on what is the Gospel of Thomas, because I think, like me, I had never heard of it, all right, until recently. And so I wanted to make sure when I reference the Gospel of Thomas, you know what these writings are, okay? In today's WTFU Daily, we return to ancient truth before religious manipulation, to remember who women were always meant to be, thinking, discerning, responsible stewards, not passive followers. Okay, we draw from wisdom sayings from the Gospel of Thomas as reflective teachings and anchor them with the Hebrew scriptures to ground identity, authority, and responsibility. So there's this 7 mountains lens, okay? So faith is one of them. Faith as discernment, not doctrine. Family leadership without domination. Education that forms thinkers, not compliant followers. Healthcare as stewardship, as leadership of body and mind. Economy as capacity and provision. Media as clarity over the noise. And government as responsibility over dependency. We shouldn't depend on the government, okay? This episode is designed to leave women steady, capable, and awake, not emotional or afraid. Now, there are some women that you have situations that you may need to be on government assistance. And if you're on disability or don't ever think I'm shaming you for that, because there are some cases where people need that extra help, okay? But if you are capable, if you're not disabled and you can do more, then it should be a temporary thing, okay? All right, so don't forget to subscribe to my channel. So the core scriptures, Gospel of Thomas, and the 2 anchoring scriptures we're using here is Genesis 1:27, okay? The authority, the image and representation and authority. And then Colossians 2:8, guard against hollow traditions that capture the mind. Okay, there's a quiet exhaustion many women feel, and because they lack faith, but because not because they lack faith, I apologize, because they've been managed by systems that confuse control with care. Today's truth is simple and ancient. You were never meant to be managed. In the ancient world, authority wasn't micromanagement. In Genesis, the word tzelem, often translated image, means representation and authority. Kings placed an image in a territory to signify stewardship, not domination. So applied to women today, you weren't designed to disappear into duty. We talked about this yesterday, how some women are just like overexhausted, they're burned out, they're doing all the things, and then they're not taking care of themselves. Or they're not being great leaders in their home. They're not being a great example for their children. Okay, you were designed to bring order where you're placed. Okay, so wisdom sayings, early wisdom sayings preserved in the Gospel of Thomas repeatedly point inward toward discernment, responsibility, and clarity, not obedience without understanding. Sometimes we are told when we're in like religious institutions or, you know, the government or whatever, they want us just to have, or the education system, they want us to be obedient without understanding, right? Healthcare, you have to do all these things. Our animals, they have to be back, they need all these shots. All of these things without truly understanding, is it going to be harmful to them or us? You know, these things, we haven't been, they've conditioned us to not think. Okay, I'm here to help you start thinking again and take leadership and stewardship over your life, because you are a child of God, made in his image. I'm going to say that over and over again, okay? Not fear-based compliance, but awakening the capacity to see and act truthfully. So in the seven mountains, the faith, discernment over doctrine. Faith isn't turning your mind off. Sometimes I feel like when I went to church, it was like, sometimes we just don't think. We just go, we're almost like robots, you know, like, what do we do? What do you want us to do? And we're not thinking. Like, does that really make sense? Does that apply to me? That I'm not aligned with that message. Like, we just assume, you know, and I'm here to challenge you to think. It's learning to test, discern, and align. Doctrine without discernment becomes control. You never thought about it that way, huh? Family, authority without domination. Leadership is the home to calm order. Routines, boundaries, presence, not shouting, not shrinking, just steady governance. Okay, education, thinking, not compliance. Children learn by watching you ask good questions. So mom, are you asking good questions? Are your kids listening to you? It's okay to have some pushback. You know what I mean? Like, ask more questions. If it doesn't make sense, if you don't have clarity on how does this affect me and my health, my body, my mind, my kids, my generations after me, we have to ask these things and not just be, in compliance to their rules. Break the rules, okay? We have to push back. I did a post this week on all these vaccinations, the rabies shots for our dogs. Like, we just done things because we assume that's the way it has to be done. Well, they're harmful, okay? And maybe it's about greed. And I don't want to participate or give my dogs anything that's going to be harmful to them. I don't need them on your schedule. Children learn by watching you ask good questions. Education that discourages thinking creates dependence. They want you to be dependent. I want you to know that, okay? And we're here to break that. I want you to be in control. I don't want you managed, okay? And you shouldn't want to be managed. Education that discourages thinkers creates dependence. Don't forget that. Faith forms capable minds. In healthcare, stewardship of your body and your mind. Your body is entrusted to you. Stewardship means learning, caring, and choosing, not outsourcing all authority. Let's talk about the economy, capacity and provision. Provision grows where competence and relationships exist. Relationships are the new currency. So it's important to meet new people and connect with people and learn and listen, hear how do they think? What do they do? I shared a story about this lady that was a vice president before I became a vice president at the bank. And I used to watch her moves because she was just this woman that she was a great role model, and I could see that she took very good care of her health. She had kids, she had a husband, but I wanted to know the things that she ate. How does she stay in such great shape? I wanted to know what she does for her pastime. I wanted to know, I wanted to watch everything about her because I thought she was all put together. She wore makeup. Her hair was beautiful. Like, don't judge me, okay? But I just worked out. But here's what I'm saying is that find people that you want to learn more about and pay attention to all the things that they do. And we can learn a lot from people that are doing big things in life, in this world. Provision grows where competence and relationships exist. Money is not evil, folks. Okay, ladies, money is not evil. Ignorance, okay, and fear create fragile people. You don't want to be fragile, okay? The media, clarity over the noise. Not every not every voice deserves your attention. Clarity is protection. And here's the government. Responsibility over dependency. Healthy societies require capable families. Dependency weakens. Responsibility stabilizes. It gives you power, okay? So ask yourself today, where have I handed over responsibility because it felt easier than thinking? Like I said, we were brought up to maybe think that this is just the way we do things. They know what's best. This is all I've ever known. So many people that are starting to question their religion or the government or their or healthcare or vets, doctor, whatever, okay? They're starting to question things. But they don't even know where to go. So in all those areas, where have I handed over responsibility because I felt it was easier than thinking? So there's a lot of folks that have been challenged because they grew up in a certain religion. They don't know anything else. That's their entire identity. And they might just now be starting to question things because they're learning new things out there. And they could be so lost because that was all they knew. They don't even know who they are outside of that. That's sad. Okay, so take one area back. Take one area back. Okay, I'm sorry, but I'm going to take control over this. Okay, I'm going to create new beliefs around what I believe, not what someone else told me to believe. You don't need permission to think clearly. You don't need approval to steward well. You were never meant to be managed. You were meant to lead with clarity. And I want you to subscribe and tell all of your friends that are questioning all these areas of their life and what they believe, and let them know there's someone that is sharing things that you've never heard before, but it makes you feel really good because it tells you that faith was before religion, and I can be in control of who I am and what I do, and I don't need to pass on control over to someone else. Okay? You want to pray? My prayers are a little bit different because I don't ask for things because I believe that I already have so much. Do you ask for things? You pray and ask for all these things in your, when just the fact that you got up today is such a beautiful thing. And we should be just so grateful for that, right? So here's Sunday's prayer, okay? Yahweh, thank you for the life you've given me, for the breath in my body, for the clarity you've been restoring in me. Thank you for the seasons that refine me, for the quiet where you strengthened me, and for the responsibility you entrusted in me. Thank you for the opportunities you've already placed in my path, and for the people you've aligned in my life, those who sharpen me, ground me, and call me higher. I acknowledge the authority you placed within me, the wisdom you designed me to carry, and the steadiness you are forming in me now. I walk today not in fear, not in striving, but in alignment with truth, clarity, and purpose. I remain attentive, I remain responsible, and I remain faithful. Thank you for all that you are and for all that you have already done. Amen. I hope this touched you. Let's see. Let me read some of these comments. What's a good insight on religion that you can give? Well, when I was a convert to the LDS church, but before that, I went to a Baptist church. I went to the Baptist girls camp. That was fun, actually. I went to Jehovah's Witness. And I remember when I went to the Jehovah's Witness church, I went there because my parents weren't active in any church. They grew up in the LDS church, but when they turned like 12, they stopped going. And so when I was born, we just didn't go. But I had friends that were part of different churches. And so I would go and do things with my friends in their churches, And so that's why I went to the Baptist church. When I went to the Jehovah's Witness church, my next door neighbor, Katrina, was a Jehovah's Witness. And I was like, ooh. And I used to go with them on Saturdays to go and pass out oh my gosh, it's a little magazine. It starts with a W, I think. Anyway, we'd go and pass those out and talk to people. But I remember I'd been going for about 6 months. That name of that flyer, that book that they would give out is like right there on my... I was looking to see if someone else remembered it. I can't remember what it was. But anyway, so we would go and give these out. But after I'd been going there for 6 months, it was Halloween time. And the dad said to me, Tina, if you're going to go trick-or-treating, well, he said, are you going trick-or-treating? I was like, yeah. I was in 6th grade. And so he says, well, if you're going to go trick-or-treating, then you shouldn't be coming back to church with us. And I was like, okay, I'm going trick-or-treating. So, and then I had friends, I went to a Catholic church for a little bit. I had a friend that's Catholic. Born-again Christian, that was different for me because I had already been going to an LDS church, which is very reverent. You have to be like this, it's like keep your arms folded and be quiet. And it's very reverent-like, and I went with my sister to her church, which was born-again Christian. What do they call that? She was saved or whatever. When she was in high school, she went with her friend. Her friend was Pakistan. And so she went with her friend to her church. And born again. I guess it's called born again, right? And I couldn't believe it when I went with her to the church she was going to because they were loud and they were holding their hands up in the air and they had guitars and drums and they were getting down and people were, like in the, there's all the little benches and there's people going up and down the aisles and dancing and praise Lord, you know, and all of this. And because I had only been going to the LDS church at that point, I had never experienced it before. And I was like, oh my gosh, it was a little bit overwhelming for me. And I went quite a few times with my sister to her church. She is not active in church anymore. I would say she's just more spiritual. And so, yeah, that's actually where she met her Pakistan husband too. And he's like 15 years older than her. So I have two Pakistan, you know, I have a niece and a nephew, and they're both half, you know, and they're beautiful children. So, yeah. And then I went to the LDS church, and I asked lots of questions because some things just didn't make sense to me. I was that one, I think, member that drove them nuts because I would ask questions, and I know it, you know, drove a lot of people. And some of the questions they didn't even know how to answer because they've just been told things all their life and they never questioned things. And so the questions that I had, they hadn't even thought about. So I found that interesting. So, and I have a lot of friends that are LDS. You know, I live in Utah. It's pretty prominent here, LDS. But, and I love them all. I don't agree with the teachings. I think they it's more controlling. I don't think that they teach who we really are, you know? And I think there's a lot of hypocrites in that religion, unfortunately. I think they're getting better. They're making changes, you know? But I love people. Sometimes I call things out as I see it, but it's more just to WTFU, wake the families up, you know? I feel like that's my calling. Not just in faith, really in all areas. So anyway, I appreciate you guys joining. I hope that helped answer that. Do you prefer EFN or? Okay, you're killing me, Dom. I don't even know what you mean. I'll have to look that up. EFN or, you caught me there. But you know what? I'm going to look it up because I want to know things. I'm learning things all the time. Is that an acronym for something? Oh, I'll look it up, okay? And then I'll let you know next time I go live. Anyway, you guys are incredible. I appreciate you. Have an awesome day.